Damon Lindelof, why would you do this to me in this episode? Like, this episode got me all in my emotions. I'm gonna try not to go off on a rant for this episode. I might lose some followers after this review, because... So Watchmen episode 6, entitled This Extraordinary Being, basically picks up where the last episode left off, and it takes a trip down memory lane after Angela swallowed the entire bottle of nostalgia pills. And just like with all the other Watchmen reviews that I've done so far, I'm going to be talking full spoilers. If you have not seen episode 6 of Watchmen, This Extraordinary Being, go watch that and come back here. So like I mentioned, this episode picks up right where the last episode left off, and Angela is in jail being held in contempt for basically covering up the murder of Chief Judd. Lori is trying to talk to her because she swallowed a whole bottle of nostalgia pills, and you learn the origin of nostalgia and how they were originally created for dementia patients to possibly jog their memory. But just like with most drugs that are intended for one purpose, they ended up being abused. Lori makes the comment, she says, why live in the present when you can live in the past? And talking about the name of the pill being nostalgia is a big thing. I mean, hell, look at everything that's going on in the real world with all these properties. The Lion King and Cinderella and all these properties from the past are getting reboots or remakes. So people are definitely addicted to nostalgia, so I can definitely see why they would be addicted to these pills. But with that, a person was never intended to ingest another person's memories. Lori's trying to convince Angela to sign a consent form to get her stomach pumped so they can get the nostalgia pills out of her. But of course, Angela doesn't do it. And so we take a trip back to the past, and we see Will first be inaugurated into the New York City Police Department. And again, as I mentioned before, the thing I love about this show is they keep injecting real world history into the show. And so you meet a character named Lieutenant Battle, and for those of you that don't know, that character is based on Samuel J. Battle, who is the very first black NYPD police officer. So you get to see him interact with Will, and of course, due to the racism of the time, the police chief, who was basically pinning the badges on all the other cadets, skipped over Will. Why? Because Will is black, and he doesn't think Will should be in the police force in the first place. And oh boy, this episode, like, there's a reason why I can't watch shows during the Jim Crow era or slavery, because they just piss me off regarding the history of white people in this country. Oh, I got some feelings regarding this episode. Will ends up getting pinned by Lieutenant Battle, and then he gives him this ominous warning saying, beware the Cyclops. And the thing I love about this episode in particular, this episode was directed by Stephen Williams, and he did a phenomenal job directing this episode. Like, just the way he interspersed the black and white to show the contrast of the present day versus the past, and having Regina King's character switch with Will every so often. Like, it was great the way he directed this episode and the things that he did, and the music for this episode, my god, the score was great. And I also gotta mention that young Will was played by Javon Adepo, who played opposite of Denzel Washington and Viola Davis in the live action version of Fences, and he was the lead in the movie Overhaul, which is a movie that I really enjoyed, and I feel like that movie did not get the praise that it deserved. I loved Overhaul, so if you haven't seen Overhaul, definitely check that movie out. His performance as a younger adult Will was great, and you get to see him have a conversation with a woman named June, who turns out to be his wife, and you later on find out June is the baby that he ends up rescuing from the first episode, and they end up growing up together, and they eventually get married. And so she tells him, like, you never let go of what happened to you during the Tulsa Race Massacre. And honestly, can you blame him? He was a child when he saw his entire family, his entire community be slaughtered. Like, would you get over that? Like, I wouldn't get over that either. But yeah, so she tells him, like, you have a lot of rage in you, and so I'm afraid that now that you're a police officer, you have a gun and a nightstick, what you're going to do with this power. And what he tries to do with that power is the right thing. When he sees a white man, obviously racist, throw a Molotov cocktail into a Jewish establishment, and Will tries to go after him. But of course this man isn't paying him any attention, because it's 1938. What is this black boy gonna do against this white man? And so Will is like, I'm gonna put you under arrest. And the white man smugly says, yeah, okay, we'll see how this goes. And so Will takes him to the police precinct, basically saying, I'm booking this man, he's under arrest. I saw him throw a Molotov cocktail into an establishment. And of course the guy is trying to talk his way out of it by like, who are you gonna believe, this spook or me? And honestly, like, I automatically assumed it wasn't gonna go the right way. But one of his co-workers, his partners, was like, what did you say to my fellow officer? You better apologize to him. And I was like, oh, that was unexpected. And so the white cop takes the man and sends him to jail, but then he does this suspicious gesture before he walks away. And of course, Will believes that justice is being served. The man is going to go to jail. He feels good about himself because they believed him over this white man. And so he goes out. And again, this time they literally have a Superman reference in this episode where a guy is reading Action Comics and he talks about Superman and how his planet was being destroyed and how he was sent away. And Will gets flashbacks of what happened to him in Tulsa. And then while the man is talking to him, the man that he literally just arrested purposely brushes his shoulder because he wants him to know that you didn't really do anything, bro. Have a good day. And I was just like, oh, those motherfuckers. And again, with the way this show is directed, like I love the way this show is directed. Like the way they go from scene to scene. They just had a door there to characterize the entrance to the precinct. It almost looked very theater-esque in that sense. And again, how they kept flip-flopping between Angela and Will. And so Will confronts the desk clerk basically saying, why'd you let this guy go? And the desk clerk is trying to warn Will, like, you need to stay out of this. Otherwise, you're going to get shot. Like, I'm trying to warn you, stay out of it. And so he drops it and then he walks home for the night, only to be confronted by 3 white cops in a car. And you knew where this was going. I was like, Will, please do not get in that car. And he doesn't get in the car. He knows better. I like when you see horror movies where white people are always like, is someone there? And then they walk towards the danger. Black people ain't having none of that. We already have our own issues in the real world. There's no way we're gonna be stupid in a horror movie. But yeah, so he doesn't get in the car and you think that's that, but the cops circle around and they basically beat him up and they take him to a tree to lynch him. Just like Will in this episode, I feel the rage bubbling within me. And right before Will dies, they cut him down. And the leader of the pack basically says, you keep your black face out of white folks' business, nigga. And I was just like, oh, kill his ass. And so in the very next scene, you see him walking still with the noose around his neck, the ropes around his hands. And I have to throw a joke into here because this episode was so enraging. The first thing that I thought about, so I was like, is this where Jussie Smollett got it from? Because he kept the noose around his neck, just like the whole Jussie Smollett scandal. And so that's the first thing I thought about when I saw him walking. But anyway, so Will sees this couple who happen to be white being accosted by some white muggers. And this is his Spider-Man moment. This is his Batman moment. This is the moment where he becomes a superhero, where he decides to intervene, not because he really wants to help them, but because he needs to let go of this rage that he has in him. He takes the hood that the cops put around him when they were lynching him, puts some eye holes in it, tightens the noose around his neck, so the mask doesn't come off while he's fighting. And so then he goes after the muggers and basically beats the shit out of them. And it is at that moment that you finally get the confirmation of something that I basically speculated from the first episode. And I'm not the only one that guessed this. And plus the timeline matches up perfectly that Will is actually Hooded Justice. And so what Will did the previous night makes the papers, and his wife basically says, if you want to continue doing this, not only do you have to cover your face, but you have to wear, because you can see his skin through the eye slits. So you have to wear makeup so that people think you're white. Because if they knew it was a black guy under the mask fighting crime, they're gonna kill you. And so you find out that Will, pretty much in the exact same way that Angela does for her makeup, it's an excellent dichotomy between Will and Angela in the fact that, A, there was a whole conversation about genetic trauma in the previous episode where they talked about the squid incident. And obviously Angela is Will's descendant. She's literally following the exact same footsteps as Will, to the point that she's a cop, just like he was a cop, and he's a vigilante, just like she's a vigilante. He wears his makeup in the exact same pattern that she does, but the difference is he's lightening his skin where she's darkening her skin. And I think it's a very interesting trope on just the idea and stereotype, and even in the real world, with this premise where if you see a superhero, especially with a mask on, the general thought is that hero is more than likely automatically white. And when it's revealed that that person isn't white, people are shocked. Or you get comments from people saying, oh, Superman can't be black. And it's like, why not? He's an alien. He could be anything. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. I'm talking about Watchmen. I said I wasn't going to go on a rant. Now, as Hooded Justice, he goes on this full investigation behind what the mystery is of this organization that Lieutenant Battle warned him of, Cyclops. So he breaks into a Ku Klux Klan facility and beats the hell out of them. And he comes across this book that basically says mesmerize. And he comes back across the guy that he originally arrested, and that guy tries to shoot him. And Will jumps out the window, and you get this awesomely shot scene where it almost seems like Piper from the Charmed Ones froze Will as he's jumping out the window. And so Will / Angela are frozen in midair with the glass all around them. And that was Stephen Williams' way to show Angela has kind of broken out of the nostalgia, because now you see Laurie, and the way they shot it was great, because Laurie is still in the black and white because Angela is still deep into the hallucination, but then you see little spurts of color coming to Laurie's face as Angela's slowly kind of waking up, because they say Angela was in a coma, but they gave her a shot of adrenaline and she can't move her body, but she's still awake. So Laurie's talking to Angela, and Laurie's saying to Angela, blink if you can understand me. And Angela does blink, so she can hear Laurie. And so she tries to get Cal to speak to her and read to her and remind her who she is, try to get her to wake up, and Angela is remembering because she starts to cry. And again, I can't talk enough about how awesome this episode was shot. Stephen Williams put his whole foot into this episode. And so jumping to the next scene, you see Will and his wife sitting at home, and there's a knock at the door. And in comes Nelson Gardner, aka Captain Metropolis. He basically figured out that Will is Hooded Justice, and he recruits him to the new organization called the Minutemen, which is what you know from the comics of Silk Spectre, the comedian, Mothman, etc. Which, I mean, there's definitely a joke in there regarding their name, but I'm not gonna say it. And he was saying that they were all inspired by Hooded Justice, the very first masked vigilante. And so Will basically says, if I join you, will you help me with this conspiracy that I'm working on? And Nelson says yes. And in a very funny scene where his wife says no, the very next scene jumps to Nelson saying yes, as you get the actual reveal that Will is actually a gay man. So him and Nelson are actually having sex. And it made me realize, I was like, so Hooded Justice is now actually the first live action black gay superhero that we've ever had. And so Nelson basically tries to tell Will, almost in a way where he tries to make himself seem like he's not like the rest of them, where he says to Will, I wish the rest of the world could see you as this beautiful black man and know that you are actually Hooded Justice, but that's not the world that we live in. And almost trying to invoke feelings of, oh, he's a nice white guy. But then you jump to the next scene, and Captain Metropolis, Nelson Gardner, is just as complacent and willing to use racist iconography just like everybody else. Where when they're advertising for the Minutemen, he shows like a little poster of a masked vigilante taking out a over-exaggerated caricature of a black man. And I was just like, why am I not even surprised? It's moments like this, and then jump into something that happens later on once he finds the warehouse of the Cyclopses, and he tries to get Nelson to rally the rest of the Minutemen and come help him. And Nelson says, you need to solve black problems on your own or something like that. I was like, see, this is exactly why the saying exists, that just because you like black dick doesn't mean you like black people. So it's like, yeah, Nelson might like Will as an individual, but when it comes to the issue of his blackness, he doesn't want to be bothered with it. And being a white man, he has the privilege of not being bothered with it, which is the reason racism still exists, because ending racism is not up to black people. Black people didn't create racism, and black people are not going to end racism. In order for racism to end, white people, you need to check your people. And that's having conversations at family dinners, checking your friends that make sly racist comments. And people don't want to do that because it's uncomfortable, and they don't want to put themselves in an uncomfortable position, and they have the privilege not to put themselves in an uncomfortable position. But we don't have that choice. Anyway, back to the episode. And so you find out that Cyclops has been making a hypnosis projection screen where while black people are at the movie theater, they basically see a flash. They're forced to attack each other and only each other. Almost kind of in a way what happened in the first Kingsman movie during the church scene. And so Will is able to track them down and basically take out their whole operation when he finds out that the man behind it, he's the same exact man that was arrested years ago earlier in this episode, because this episode takes place in the span of a couple years, because Will didn't have a child when this episode began, and then he has like a 7-year-old or 8-year-old by the time this episode is over. And so seeing that guy again and finding out that he's behind the Cyclops basically makes Will snap, and he shoots the guy point blank in the head. And so then he goes on a murder spree, taking out everybody from Cyclops and burning the whole facility to the ground, but not before taking one of the projectors. And eventually you find out his wife leaves him because he can't stop being a vigilante. Like she thought him going around as Hooded Justice would help tamper his anger, but it just made it worse. So then you finally loop around to the murder of the first episode, and you find out that no, Will actually did kill Chief Judd. He didn't literally do it himself. He used the projection machine that he got from the 30s to basically hypnotize Chief Judd to kill himself. Because of everything that he went through in the past, knowing that Chief Judd came from a KKK family background, and instead of throwing away the Klan robe, he kept it as a form of heritage and honoring his heritage and all that bullshit bullshit that people try to do when they talk about like the Confederate flag and it's not about racism, it's about honoring heritage. No, it's about honoring your heritage to be racist. So just like in the first episode, Chief Judd eventually dies, and then you see Angela wake up in Lady True's office, and she has like an IV drip attached to her veins, and you're wondering, how did she get to Lady True's office? I guess we'll find out next week. But yeah, like I said, this episode gave me so many emotions, but I loved the hell out of this episode. And Damon Lindelof and the writers behind this show are so smart. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that Alan Moore's original intention for Hooded Justice, he probably was more than likely not a black man, but considering his odd costume choice with the fact that he had a noose around his neck and ropes on his arms, to me it makes the most perfect sense for him to be a black man. So basically what this show did is completely retcon the original comics and change the origin of Hooded Justice without really changing a single thing. Everything that they did in this episode and the origins for Hooded Justice completely works because we never knew where Hooded Justice came from. A lot of people speculated, and it also makes sense that if he covered his face in white eye makeup, that people automatically assumed he was white. And you have a white man taking credit for basically something a black person started, which is again something that they do throughout history, whether it's in white people stealing black music for their own or inventions or hell, property. So it's again history. But yeah, that's the thing I love about this show is like it takes real world history and incorporates it into this fantastical world. They even have a reference to the 1939 Nazi march at Madison Square Garden. But yeah, overall, if you can't tell by now, I would give this episode a giant blockbuster. Like, I'm really enjoying where the show is going. I'm really enjoying what the show is doing. I'm really enjoying the fact that this show is injecting racial history and animosity into the storyline, something that you would never expect it for a Watchmen series to do, and the fact that they're really going there and they're handling it pretty well. This is definitely my favorite episode of the series so far. But anyway, have you seen Watchmen episode 6? What did you think about it? Also, what is your favorite episode so far? Let me know down in the comment section below. Also, if you can, hit that thumbs up button and like this video to really help out the channel. And if this is your first time watching one of my videos, please check out the other videos on my channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe for more and hit that bell notification button so you're alerted every single time I post a new video. And tell your friends, families, and neighbors about my channel to help me continue to grow. And as always, I'll catch you guys next time.